Hello everyone, Everyone16 here bringing you another cast today. This one is going to be a relatively mid to high ranking custom 1 versus 1 on the map Tag Craftiest Maximus. So let's introduce our players first. Up here on the top we have Bias, who is going light blue UEF with first land and a PGen. And on the south side we have Architect, who is going dark green Seraphim with a first land and a PGen, interestingly enough. Now a side note about this game, this match was played under the Roos and Drop Bears tournament, which is a tournament that is organized for players with Australians in mind, since Australians generally can't make it with a normal tournament time, since it's normally in the middle of the night for them. So when they play the games that are suited for Australian times, then Australian players can play tournaments as well. Also, everyone else that can stay up at that time can play as well, of course. All right, so with that out of the way, let's see how these players are going to be start playing. Looks like that Bias is going to be continuing. Let's speed this up just a little bit. Looks like Bias is going to be continuing up here with his 2 mexes, and he's building his hydrocarbon and his air factory. Is he going to power soft from that? I'm not sure. He might, but he's probably going to. Yeah, he's going to focus on getting the hydrocarbon down first. And we'll see Architect, who is doing almost the same thing. But he's building his hydrocarbon plant over here, and then building a couple PGens, and then building his air factory over here. Also, both players are also going to want to expand fairly quickly, since it is a fairly big map and there are a lot of max extractors. Looks like that Bias is going to be sending his engineer down here, is going to capture these mexes, plus build a radar and a point defense. I'm not entirely sure why he's building the point defense. He might want to protect against any run-bys coming up through here, but in the end, I'm not entirely sure if that's the best thing to do. Meanwhile, you have Architect, who's going here. He has his first engineer actually going over here, capturing the underwater mexes. This is actually one of the interesting things about this map. There are a bunch of underwater mexes that ring around the map, so capturing Navy can actually be important here, because it can also get you more mass, and having Navy can also deny your opponent mass. Meanwhile, he's also going to be radially expanding his engineers out away from his base. He's doing kind of the same thing over here that Bias did, except he doesn't have a point defense planned. He just has his two mexes and a radar. And he also has this engineer expanding down here. And this is an interesting move, he also has a THAM that is assisting it, which is a fairly good to move, especially if you're afraid that one of your engineers might get picked off by a raider or an enemy army or something. Just send a tank with it to protect it in case any either a lab or a tank tries to attack a bomber, attack that engineer. Meanwhile, this bomber, that's why I said bomber, this bomber just took out an engineer from Bias, and he also took out another unit. It was from Bias, but it is going to get shot down. But I think that bomber did work for itself. It killed an engineer. It looks like he killed a yeah, that's an engineer over here, and over here it looks like he killed, and you can't see what he killed since it destroyed the wreck, but it probably was an engineer then. So that bomber did good work over here, and he looks like Architect is also going to be expanding down here with these factories to help claim this area over here. Meanwhile, on the top, looks like that Architect is going to be capturing this eco over here, but Bias is moving his commander over here. It looks like he's going to be taking these mexes and also building 2 factories over here, so he can have some units that are being produced to capture this area. And one of the things about this map is that since this area is close to Architect and this area is close to Bias, it tends to be that both players will just take the one that's on the same side as theirs instead of moving across. But you also have some people that are working to deny the enemy over here, since it can be done, but it is a lot closer to this side is a lot closer to Bias, so it's easier for Bias to take this side, and it's easier for Architect to take this side. But you see, Bias is trying to counteract that by trying to deny Architect over here. Just like looks like that Architect's going to run in 2 tanks, and the commander, not Architect, Bias is going to be running to these 2 tanks, and his commander is going to easily deal with it. Meanwhile, it looks like that Bias is not Bias. I keep getting confused. Architect is going to be sealing off the central pass with these wall sections, and when he gets it completed, probably something that's going to need engineer units in order to get through the walls, or unless they want to just shoot at the walls over and over again. It looks like that Architect's his base is getting built up here. He already has 1 factory down, and the engineer is working on the other ones. But Bias has already sent this army down. Looks like he does outnumber Architect, especially if he's going to be able to destroy those tanks before Architect can respond with his main force. So you got about 5 THAMs compared to 7 strikers, and so the strikers will have the advantage here. And if Bias if he rushes in and tries to take out these Thams, he could probably beat this area and kill that engineer. But the longer the factories are alive, the more units they'll build, and the less advantage that Bias will have. It looks like he did move in, but it looks like that the factories did get some units off at time, and then Architect has these units moving down, which is going to push Bias back and force him to consolidate further back away from the factories. Meanwhile, it looks like that Bias is pushing up forwards with his commander. He's got 2 tanks moving up here towards the engineer over here, which doesn't have any military units defending it, even though he does have the radar that can see this. But it looks like Architect was power stalling right there. I'm surprised he didn't turn the radar off if he's power stalling. He also built a whole bunch of power right there, so I'm surprised he's power stalling. So he must have. So he's probably all these factories must be spamming out units so much that he can't keep up with the power. Meanwhile, Bias is going to be trying to move in, try to take out these factories, but Architect is going to repulse the attack again, and is going to build up more forces down here. Meanwhile, Bias will be building up this forces over here with this point defense to help protect this eco over here. Plus, he's going to build up a radar so he can see what Architect is doing. Looks like Architect went a little bit further into the air game. Looks like he has 3 interceptors over here, and I don't think that Bias has any, even though he has his factory. 1 just got built right there, but looks like that Architect will still have the local air control for now. Looks like that Architect just pushed forward towards Bias, but Bias looks like Bias went early T2, which since he's UEF, which is a good move for him. Looks like that those pillars are superior to the Thams, so he is going to have a tech advantage, if not a numbers advantage for the time being. But however, Architect is going to have is going to be able to outspam him for the time being, and looks like his Zui is going to be taking out this point defense, so that point defense isn't going to work since it's going to be destroyed really quickly. Architect is going to pull the same move on the other side. He's going to push forward and try to take out these factories. Looks like he might do it, but Bias's force is going to be moving out here and clean all this up, especially if he keeps focusing the land factories. They're just going to be meat shields, and Bias's force is just going to clean this up. Meanwhile, looks like that Architect. Now, I keep looking at the scoreboard and they keep switching. Bias moved forward and destroyed all these mexes, and is going to be building factories on top of Architect's factories. So Bias is going to capture this area as soon as he is going to have complete control over it as soon as this force is destroyed. Looks like that Architect is going to be trying to run his forces here around the cliff, but the pillars are going to be able to pick them off, especially when Architect is purposely not exposing the majority of his force towards this side by spreading them apart and only having some of them attack Bias's force at a time. Looks like Bias is also going to be moving down here. He's got pillars moving up on Architect's base over here. Looks like that Architect has T2, so Architect is going to be building Yoshios too, and he's got one right here. So he's got a T2 land factory right here, plus a T2 headquarters. Where's the headquarters? Here's the headquarters. The headquarters is right here. Plus he has got a bunch of T2 support factories, so he's going to be able to just pump out Ilshevas from his home base. So Bias's tech advantage is gone, but we'll see if he's able. Let's see what he is able to do within the time. Looks like he is going to be able to push forward down here and destroy these mexes from Architect. Architect continuing to expand in the area with continuing to capture all the waterborne mexes, and Bias hasn't actually done that. I'm surprised he hasn't, and that's probably going to affect his mass. Looks like that, Architect has about 5,000 more mass than Bias does, so that's probably all due to the expansion mexes over here. Just one engineer building all this without any contest from Bias. But it looks like Bias is going to be able to push directly towards Architect's base. Looks like that the Yoshivas are going to help defend him, especially with their longer range. Bias is going to try to retreat from there, but Architect is just going to be able to use the extended range to kill all this tech anyway. Looks like a bunch of Seraphim Rex right here, which probably tells me that an army just died here without being ordered to do anything. Meanwhile, it looks like that Bias is going to charge forward down here again. Looks like he's got a bunch of pillars which outnumber the Ilsheva army here. But looks like that the Ilsheva army has had a bit of a positioning advantage, even if it wasn't enough to counteract the huge numbers advantage. Looks like another air fight. Bias looks like Bias must have went hardcore air spam here because he just won air. At least I think he did here. Yeah, as soon as he destroyed the engine here, just one air, so he is going to be able to use air to his advantage next. He did just push forward and is sieging the base again. He did kill this T2 factory here, but Architect did get another one up. He's going to be building more Ilshevas from it. Meanwhile, Architect, He's just going hard on the spam. He just built 4 more factories up here. And does Bias know about them? He does. Okay, so Bias will probably attack those next after these factories are done. But the Ilshavas are going to be moving moving west over here to help counteract this. But there's only 7 of them, and there's not going to be able to. It's probably not going to be able to take this force out by itself. Meanwhile, Architect is moving north, and he might be able to take out this force, especially if he uses the Ilshavas right and kites with them. Looks like he did focus he's focusing his forces, and he got a bit of an advantage there. So he had all of his units attacking one unit, and Bias' force just melted in the face of that, especially when they couldn't attack. Bias, however, on the other side, got the success on the other side. He did take out all these factories, so that's a bunch of mass that Architect invested in here that's now gone. But Bias does have his consolidated Ilshava force moving down here, and this force probably could challenge this force. We'll see it's be interesting to see what happens here. It looks like that the pillars are attacking the Ilshavas now. We've got a huge fight going on right here. The Ilshavas are using their extended range, so all the Ilshavas can attack here. That's going to give them a big advantage. There's the extended range on the Ilshavas. I wouldn't say it's underestimated, because it certainly is not underestimated, but it's very good for a T2 unit here that it's just absolutely melt this pillar force simply because the pillars couldn't attack. The Ilshavas, he could focus with his entire force against the Bias's force, and Bias couldn't do the same thing because of the pillars' relatively short range. Meanwhile, you have looks like Bias is going to attack down here, but aren't any T2 units over here, so he's going to have the advantage here. But the Ilshavas are going to move up here and attack, and going to do some extra firepower. However, Bias did the right thing, and he built Mongoose, and the Mongoose, I believe, can outrange the Ilshava. Let me check. Yes, they can, because the Ilshavas aren't attacking here. So yeah, the Ilshavas just barely attacking, can just barely see the Mongoose squad, and the Mongoose squad has a much higher range. So I was right, and the Mongooses can outrange the Ilshavas. But looks like the Ilshavas swarm. I should have been watching this. The Ilshavas swarm just pushed up from Bias's base over here, completely wiped that army out, and are pushed forward towards Bias's base. Let's see if he can if he can kill any P-gens or any of the headquarters. That might actually be very good for Architect, but it probably isn't going to work. He's not going to kill. He killed some P-gens, but he didn't kill too many. If he had killed this would have been really good. All that energy being used to build that T2 P-gen just gone to waste. But it wasn't meant to be, and Bias was able to clean up all the area from his own base. Meanwhile, our Bias is going to be consolidating his area down here. He did put T2. Is that T2? Yeah, he did put T2 on his commander, and he's building triads. So he's got a ton of reclaim here that he could pick up as soon as he wanted to. There's a ton of reclaim that's closer towards Architect than it is towards Bias, so Architect might get a reclaim advantage there. And you see the whole blue-green horde of units right here and right over here. You can see them when you zoom in. It looks like that Bias is going to be using his air power to his advantage, and is going to be bombing the Ilshavas. The spread damage is going to do a lot of damage, but it's not going to focus on any one Ilshava, so it isn't going to outright damage outright lower the damage potential on that Ilshava force right away, but it is going to make it easier to kill. It looks like that the pillars did get moved down here, and they did take advantage of that, and are going to be able to take out this Ilshava force. And so Bias has once again secured this area, even though he doesn't have any eco or engineers here to take advantage of it. Meanwhile, there's a standoff over here. He's got Bias looks like he's going to be PD creeping Architect, but Architect has all these Ilshavas over here that looks like he's going to be charging in. The Mongoose are going to be firing first, of course, and then the Ilshava is going to be raining fire down on the pillars. It looks like that the Bias is going to be retreat closer to this point defense, and it is going to force Architect to pull back just slightly to consolidate his force. Then he is going to move forward and focus down that PD. Looks like that Bias has gun on his commander as well. It's either gun or Ras, but I'll check it later. It looks like that the Ilshava force is going to charge in, and looks like Bias is going to have to retreat from this, even though he has the point defense. It actually surprises me. So it did force Bias to push back, even though Architect is going to retreat from that. It looks like that the army that was over here is going to be doing the same thing to Architect on this side, is going to be trying to attack the base, but it is a lot easier to attack from the wide open terrain here than it is in the more closed off terrain over here. So Architect is going to be able to hold his choke point a little bit more, but Bias did go T2 air, and he's focusing down a T2 mechs from Architect. That's going to be That's going to be interesting for him. And he did catch up on the mass game. Looks like that bias is only slightly behind now in Eco. A lot of that, I bet you that a lot of that has to be reclaimed, because he doesn't have more mexes than Architect did. It does now, especially since Architect has all the these outside mexes. It looks like the Architect also went Navy here too. I'm surprised they didn't do this earlier. I'm surprised there haven't been a huge naval battle on both sides to accompany the land battles, but neither player thought it was worth it, I guess. And it looks like that the flak, the T2 flak, is going to push the gunships out, so the gunships aren't going to be too much of a threat anymore, at least in the main base with the flak, but they are going to be able to take out, damage these all Ilsheva armies that don't have any anti-air with them. Looks like that Architect is reaffirming his control of the air, so he isn't going to have to worry about any interceptors attacking him either. Looks like that this wayward force of pillars just got focused down by these Ilshevas, so a slight victory for Architect right there, but he is being pushed back on the other fronts. However, he went straight for T2 Navy on this, and since he isn't being contested in the Navy, if he could just pump out cruisers, and that would wreak havoc on Bias's infrastructure. We'll see if he goes through with that, but he isn't building anything from that factory right now. He's just focusing on building the other ones first. Looks like that there's a little bit of a lull in the action now. Bias consolidating his not jesters, the specters down here, not specters, stingers. Thinking they're on. His consolidating his stingers down here. Looks like that they're just try-harding so hard I have to mute Mumble. Apparently he was on Mumble talking with someone this time and it was distracting him. Alright, so it looks like that Bias, so they're just consolidating here, but Bias does have a pretty severe map advantage, even if he doesn't have a naval advantage. It looks like he's got, let's see how many mass extractors he has. He's got, it doesn't tell me? Why doesn't it tell me? It's not telling me how many there are. Okay, there now. There you go. He's got 26 mass extractors, 26 T1 mass extractors, and 10 T2 mass extractors. Meanwhile, Architect has 18 T1 mass extractors and 5 T2 mass extractors. So the extra land advantage is now pulling in Bias's favor. It looks like that Bias has almost more than double. It looked like he had more than double mass, but it's probably just reclaim. Yeah, it's got to be reclaim. And he also has a 12k mass advantage overall. Meanwhile, it looks like that the ceasefire has ended, and Bias is going to be pushing forward with his pillars. That many pillars is going to be no match. These Ilshevas will be no match for all those pillars. I almost got it backwards there. It looks like that. I was right. It looks like he did that. Architect has built a cruiser right here, and it looks like he's building more cruisers. So these attack missiles are just going to rain down on his eco without any TMD whatsoever. He's going to have free reign over this, and of course he's not going to be able to use the gunships to take out the cruiser because it's a cruiser. Right, he doesn't have any gunships. I keep forgetting which side has which units. So he isn't going to be able to use air to take this out unless he goes heavy T2 with torp bombers or something. This cruiser and any other cruisers built are going to have free reign to do whatever they want. However, Bias is closing further on this vice against Architect. He did get some engineers out here to push forward against these walls, and he's going to be pushing forward down. He's got a whole horde of Ilshevas to defend himself, but Bias has T3 land, so the slightly better Ilshevas party is over. Looks like that Architect to put gun on his commander, so he is going to be able to fight back against this northern horde of mongoose and pillars. But however, while he's pushing the north back, the west is pushed down here. He's going to kill this. The first target of opportunity is the factory, the HQ right here. So if he can destroy that, no more Ilshevas for him until he rebuilds it. However, he's doing the exact same thing the Architect did in the building. He's trying to squeeze in between here. And in doing so, he's leaving his entire force open to counterattack along the entire way. Looks like that the Ilshevas are going to just completely destroy the pillar force that was in here, but the pillars did destroy this T2 P-Gen, and that's probably going to wreak havoc on his power. It looks like it already is. And the only okay, so it didn't wreck the power, but it did make him harder to use his overcharges as often as he would like. It looks like that these mongooses are going to push forward against the commander, but the commander's veterancy is going to save it. Meanwhile, the Ilshava Swarm is pushed back against the Percival and all the pillars, but it isn't going to. He isn't going to be able to sustain that, and he's going to push forward. Looks like that now Bias is going all in, and he is pushing his gunships over here. But there is flak, so those gunships are going to be destroyed really quickly. But he is going to focus down the T2 P-Gen. So if he can destroy the P-Gen, it's going to be worth it. But he isn't going to. And it looks like that Bias is going to be pushing further into Architect space. But Architect has a pretty dense group of Ilshavas right here, so he is going to be able to hold off for a little bit, if not forever. Even if he is going to be able to do it forever. He's got 4 cruisers out now, but they're not going to help him. He needs to move him down here if he wants them to help with his land. Honestly, cruisers probably wouldn't be the best thing for that, though. Sorry, my brain is just dead. He's just sitting here, so I guess he's already admitting that he's got outplayed in this match, and he's probably going to lose. But we've got to wait for Bias to actually finish him off. He's got 2 Percivals right here, plus the T2 units are going to be pushed down. Architect's about half health, but he's got a 5 vet gun comm, so he's going to be able to be pretty survivable, if not everything else. It looks like all of his mass went down. It was probably the pillars, not the pillars, the stingers. I'm not sure what else would have done this, but Architect doesn't have any mass left. He's only got 28 mass income, and the Bias's force is moving in, and I think that's all she wrote. Looks like that Architect's going to retreat to the water, but his entire land-based production is dead. He's got He's got all of his water mexes, since Bias did not even try to contest them, and he's got his lineal factories down here, but that's probably game right there. It looks like that Architect knows it too, and he's going to move out and face the music. The Percivals are going to come in and attack his commander. Am I still running at +2? Can't believe I ran that entire game at +2. Okay, so yeah, Architect, he came out, he knew that was happening, and he faced the music, and the Percivals focused him down and killed him. All right, then. So that's it for me. That was good. That was a pretty entertaining match. Bias sent that in to me, so he wanted me to cast it. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do that. Looks like that. I think I could see why Bias didn't go in the Navy, because the Navy did not save Architect, and he did lose map control before he went Navy, but all the mass that he poured into this Navy didn't help him fight off any of the land spam. So I can see why that might have, it probably didn't kill him, but it probably didn't help him win. So probably just wasted mass right there. All right, so I hope you all enjoyed that. That's it for me. This is Everyone with 6 signing out.